muted unless you're speaking.
Great.
That'll make sure we've got the best audio. So thanks for doing that, Claire. Great. So some of you might be on day 0. Some folks have decided not to start right away and they're setting things up. Some of you might be on day 1 and some of you are on day maybe 5 or something of using the system. So people are coming at it from slightly different points of view. I think that's great. I'm curious, our agenda is just to check in on a few items here. This meeting will pretty much just be self-directed in terms of length. Depending on what people raise, will kind of drive how much time we take, but certainly not more than an hour. So I guess I just wanted to start with the first piece on our agenda is the initial training and response from staff. If you have any feedback about the training or if you're getting kind of certain questions coming up chronically from staff, that you might want to just kind of raise with us or exchange ideas together with other folks on the call. Anyone want to quickly able to share kind of what the response has been so far from your staff? Anything about the initial training that we could adjust or add to for future training?
Sure. This is Corin, and we were able to have some folks go to the kind of initial overview training, and then we made a little manual and trained everybody together on Tuesday. And we did the training by kind of going over some of the things in the overview again in a particular way, and then we put in a new case and then put in a case that we were transferring from DRCMS, and we did all that together in one room with laptops. And then we had everybody have a list of cases to transfer from DRCMS so that they would have the ability to test it. And happily, I got at least 2. That wasn't as bad as I expected, which I think is about as high praise as we could hope for. But what we're finding is 2 days later, people are starting to really identify things that, because of the differences, we're not able to do in the same way, and trying to figure out how do we keep kind of the same content of information to be able to keep it, and then also finding kind of technical glitches, some of them pretty serious.
And Corin, what have you been doing with the technical glitches that have come up?
The biggest one, I actually called a couple of them. I've emailed with you on. One of them was today, and I called and I figured she was in a meeting, Clara, and so I figured we could bring it up in this meeting too. Like if it was finished before this meeting, then I'd be able to tell everybody how it worked. But
okay.
Sure. Yep, I had a training from about 8 to 10 this morning, my time. So just getting caught up with email and seeing everything that's come in over the last couple of days.
Okay, so why don't we raise that then for the troubleshooting? Let me pull out a few things then what you raised, Corin. It seems like there were a couple things that helped, and clearly that orientation was not a standalone event. It was meant to be supplemented by super users. It seems like one thing you did was create a manual. Another thing you've done is, you had this kind of group training, and people had assignments after that training to enter some of those cases that were being transferred. That was good for kind of the repetition and reinforcing things. And yet a few days later, you realize, okay, there are some things that people are realizing as they get in the system that they can't quite do the same way. So there's a little bit kind of shifting on the fly here in terms of making sure that you do your best in the manual, but then that things come up and you're going to have to come up with additional new systems than you anticipated. Is that about right?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing that I would put in that we did is that we have one person who's going through and doing a hard look at like 3 cases from each person, and then to make sure that folks have the general idea correct, and then doing a lighter look to make sure like the other cases are in and have the majority of the information, you know, correctly transferred. But like, I really like every single piece of information look at 3 cases for each person to make sure that they're doing it right.
Great. So you already did some spot checking on the,
Yeah.
just to make sure right from the get-go that they aren't establishing bad habits or things like that.
Right.
Awesome. Great. Great. Who else did something kind of to supplement that initial training? Anything similar to what Corin's described? Anything different to add to it?
Dan, this is Paula. So
Hey, Paula.
we basically did the same exact thing. You know, right after the training, we had folks go in and do a couple of sample cases, and then we sat together. We actually closed the office so there wouldn't be any interruptions, and we were all in one place. Luckily for us, we all are, you know, pretty close between counties. And then we sat and we went over some specifics, and we shared somewhat of a guide or a manual that we created as well. And then the truth after that, you know, I said to folks, go in and do a couple more samples, and they basically said, we just want to get at it. So just, you know, people went and put their own cases in, and have been doing that since. And, you know, we have found that, you know, we're using the calendar for the next action, we're using activity for contacts, and we're only putting calendar and activity items from within the case. And then the other things are some things that we made a list of, you know, later on. Like we're only using mail sort of in-house between each other, and we haven't done any templates or letters. We're just using our regular letters out of our computers, and those are things that we'll do later, but wanted to give a chance for everybody to really get in and see what was going on.
Wonderful. That sounds great, Paula. And it sounds like a lot of the similar stuff that Corin's group did at Peace Institute. So that sounds great. It also sounds like you're kind of doing a staged rollout. And I've heard other people describe this, that they're focusing on certain features or parts of the database from the get-go, and then they'll layer on additional pieces, in your case, like the templates and other parts as time goes on, and people are comfortable with it, so that you're not flooding them with too much. So I've heard other people take that approach as well and stage it out. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Other folks who've done something kind of similar or different to add to that? Okay. You know, I think what's been described is really, you know, very strong approach. And if there's you know, especially kind of the spot checking and having that manual, even if that manual is a work in progress, you know, those are some really great ideas. I see in the chat someone's asked, is it possible to share those manuals? Because my guess is that some folks would love to have kind of a starting point and with which they could customize. Is that something that you'd be willing to share, Corin and Paula?
Sure.
Great. If you can email that to me, then I can push it out to the group if that's most efficient. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Dan, you know the training manual that I created that we worked on together, the PowerPoint that Carol used?
Yes.
That is something that I've put on that New York support site in case that's helpful.
Okay, great. So those materials have been put up there already. Terrific. Great. So Paula and Corin, if you can send that out to me, I think what I'd like to do is probably just share that out with just getting some background noise. If someone, we could mute the mic for someone. Great, thanks. So if you could email that to me, I can share that out to the super users. Probably would want to stay away from putting that on the site for now. but I think it would be a great model for folks. So thank you so much for your generosity in sharing that. Any other initial responses from staff or anything else that folks want to share just on the start of the rollout here, depending on where you're at? Okay, that's fine. Let's move to the kind of juicier part of troubleshooting. Corin, you mentioned you had some things come up. Others may have as well. What's coming up on your radar? Things that are glitchy, things that aren't working as you expected. Let's start there. What's coming up for folks?
So our the one that's kind of most troubling is that we had explained to everybody, you know, if you get a John Doe, make sure you put a new John Doe in for each and every John Doe. And so we're not sure, you know, everybody swears that they did that correctly, but, you know, maybe they did pull the drop down and do that. But all of these John Does became linked. And so when we put the new name in for the person, the correct name of being, you know, Steve Smith, that went on all of the cases. And then as we tried to unlink the other cases, it deleted the person entirely. And we tried several different things, and both parts of that are really hard.
So
can I ask,
go ahead, Claire.
What system are you in? Just what's the name of your center? So while you're talking, I can be looking at that.
New York Peace Institute.
Okay, thanks.
And John Doe is what you put in when you don't even get the first names, the first party's name. Is that right, Corin?
Correct.
Okay, and then sometimes you do end up getting it, and that's when you switch the name. Is that about right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. What else? So we've got Claire's going to take a look at that, and so in theory, Corin, for you, your database may have eventually hundreds of John Does in there.
Correct.
And are most of those coming off of your 311 calls, or are those coming off of something else?
They also come off of something else. We use it to indicate, like, somebody calls in and says, my next door neighbor is, you know, doing X, Y, Z. But do you know your neighbor's name? No.
So
I'm
you'll
having a
put
problem
it
with my, you know, so-and-so, but I don't know the person's name. We use it to say, hey, we asked and did not get a name.
Okay, so you use it sometimes also for the responding party.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let me, in case this is the reason that you're doing that, I think it's really helpful for everyone to kind of be on the line together with this. You know, DRCMS require 2 parties per case. This does not. So you are able, with Caseload Manager, to close out with only 1 party. So if you, so some people have been entering John Doe for responding party when they, like you said, when it was the neighbor next door and they didn't know the name. You don't have to do that in this new system. You could just, you know, kind of indicate in notes or somewhere else that you don't have the name for the responding party, just the address. So if that's what's driving the decision to include it, then that doesn't need to drive it in the future.
So Corin, I'm looking in your system now, and I'm seeing that there are quite a few John Does still listed, and it looks like most of them are associated with multiple cases. I will say one thing that I've seen come up before is where, let's say you're in a case, you see John Doe listed on that case. You click on his name, and then if you want to delete John Doe from that case, people accidentally click delete on John Doe's record, meaning that they would delete all of John Doe, his association with every case. He's completely gone from Caseload Manager. So if you ever do to remove someone from a case, just make sure, just a side note, make sure that you're clicking remove association from the case down at the bottom of their record.
And that's what they did.
Okay.
And it worked on one person. And when they went to click remove from case on the other person, so they put in both parties' names as John Doe. The first party, it worked fine. The second party, they went and did the same remove from case thing, and it deleted the person and deleted, you know, the information from those cases. So, you know, everyone swears to me, you know, that they did not drop down John Doe, but now it's associated with a bunch of cases. And so that's what I don't really understand how that happened. Right?
Yeah, let's see. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm seeing 5 John Does in here, but yeah, a couple of them are associated with multiple cases. So it sounds like what might make the most sense is really to identify it and maybe set up a screen share where we can look at exactly the steps that are going on.
Okay.
Maybe identify something in there that's causing a glitch.
Okay, that sounds great. So let's let Claire and Corin kind of dig into that one offline. If there's anything that's learnable for everyone, then we'll share that out with the group. Are there other glitches or hiccups that you're noticing so far as folks are entering cases?
Dan, this is Paula.
Hey, Paula.
So when opening a new case, under the contact section, the attorneys are appearing at the top and the participants at the bottom. And when we first started using this, it didn't appear like that. The participants were at the top where you got to choose party 1 and party 2. Now when we open a new case, the attorneys are appearing as the very first person. So it's, you know, it's a little frustrating. You have to go all the way down to the participants are at the bottom.
So it sounds like what happened is somebody must have changed your sort order. So to fix that, this is what it sounds like to me. You'll want to go into settings, drop down to person types, and then change your sort order. So you can have attorney at the top, you can have participant at the top, you can move them to the bottom. So just sort it according to how you want it for your center.
Well, perfect. Thank you, Claire.
Awesome, thanks. Other hiccups, glitches, weird things happening that you're noticing? I know I got a chat from someone here. Actually, Melissa, I'm actually going to ask you Melissa from Center for Dispute Settlement. Could you chime in and share a little bit more? I'm having trouble just getting it from the chat here.
Sorry. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So basically, I noticed that when, what I've been doing and instructing people that I'm working with is that we enter, for like a custody and visitation, we enter the parents in first, save the case, then go back in and add like minor children and attorneys, and then it puts them down where they need to be, like on a separate line. It doesn't necessarily have them attached to the parent, to the participant.
So they're not associated with participant, initiating party or responding party?
Correct. Yeah. So it makes it a little bit easier and a little bit less congested on our filter on the front screen. So when it's talking about party 1, it just lists like, you know, mom and mom's mom's phone number is what I have listed on mine. And then participant 2 would be dad. And then, so the minor children were showing up under them, attached to them, along with attorneys were showing attached to them. So I just put them in, like I just put the parents in first, then hit click update, then go back into the case and then add the rest of them. So it alleviates listing attorneys first and all that. So just having the actual participants showing up on
Okay. Yeah,
Perfect.
so you're, I see what you're doing.
And then I noticed if I was deleting it, like if the child was put in under the parent, and then I put them in down below as another party, like scrolled through the thing and said like a prior person. And then if I deleted them from under the parent, it deleted them from down below. So I'd have to go back in and enter the child again. Does that make sense what I said?
Claire, does that make sense to you?
I was muted,
Claire?
sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Because like I delete, if it was like under the parent and I deleted where it was like attached to the parent and I deleted the child from that parent, and then I had put in the parent child below, I put like prior, instead of putting in their name in again, I went and listed it off the list. When I deleted it from attaching it to that parent, it deleted it from down below, it deleted the record altogether.
Got it.
So I kind of did that also where on how the screen is set up, where you can put 2 minor children, like on the first cover page. So it was attaching everything you put on the left side, it was attaching to that first participant. So if there was 2 children, it was attaching one child to one parent and the other child to the other parent. Unless you go back in, just put the parents in, save it, then go back in and enter the children. Then it wasn't attaching them to like a specific parent.
Interesting. Okay. Again, I kind of think I'd like to go in and see how you're setting it up. So just to make sure I understand, the way that our system works is you can have multiple parties, right? And then multiple participants within those parties. And so let's say you've got party 1 or your initiating party is mom, and then you can have multiple kids and attorneys, etc., all lumped together in party 1. But you should be able to add or delete anybody within that party without it affecting the other participants in that party. So that's why I'm a little confused as to what's going on, and think again, I might need some more details to really drill down.
I'm welcome to like go like one-on-one with a screen share, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Great. So we're developing a couple follow-ups here, and what we can do on our next call is if there's a report out that's useful for the group, we can share it at that time. Thanks for raising that. I'm seeing through the chat someone is saying not all of our cases are showing up. When after they add them, they're not seeing them in the case list, and I'm wondering whether that's an access level or filters, the way the filters are set up on the case list, or the access levels that staff have been granted. Are there other reasons why that might happen, Claire?
The display. So you want to make sure that your display is set to all staff and rooms. So that top drop down, because if it's just set to your name, then you will only see the cases that have been assigned to you.
So we have that same problem with activities, where if we go to look at somebody else's activities, they may not all be there. When we look at all activities, they aren't all there. And we can just add that to the same call where we're looking at it, but I just thought I'd put that out there because other people may have the same issue.
So are you going to show us an example, or do you want me to show you since you're sharing your screen right now? Are you
somebody sharing their screen?
Yeah. How about I'm going to take over and stop that screen sharing, and instead I will share my screen. How does that sound?
Okay.
Great. Okay, so right now we're looking at Caseload Manager, and what I just wanted to show you was this display. So if I click all staff and rooms, I can see everything, but if I just click on one person, then you can see it filters, and I'm barely seeing any activities now and no cases.
Right, but even when we do that, it will go down to, we know that that person has, let's say, 40 activities. It will go down to like 5.
Okay.
For that one person.
Oh.
So I'll show it to you one day when we are looking together.
Okay, it could also be, you know, as Dan mentioned, it could easily be the filter. So the filter for activities.
We checked that too.
Okay, then,
I think we should just show it to you because
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
clearly
For
wasn't
the,
what we expected.
Great.
so let's do that for the activities issue that Peace Institute is mentioning. Jorlyn, you chatted that issue with me. If you can just check that display, the rights, and the filters on the case fields, and just double check that those are all right for your staff. And if you're still having trouble finding those cases, let me know, okay? Great. What else is kind of glitchy or confusing right now as you're starting to work with the system?
Dan, it's Jen in Watertown.
Hey, Jen.
Hi. A question I have pertains to how do we, I know we kind of talked about it, but I guess I didn't jot down the answers, is how do we delete the emails and the email manager correspondence?
You cannot.
So you sent,
That is the answer.
Okay, you cannot.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
The other question I have is doing staff access levels.
Mm-hmm.
Still some confusion about if you, let's say I have an admin assistant that I want her to have access to all of her cases plus everybody else's cases. Do I making her full access?
Right. Yeah. It sounds like at the training, people put in a wish list request for Carol to add an additional access option where people can have full access but not have the ability to make any changes on the settings menu.
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like if she makes that change, then that's exactly what you would want to set up for just this type of a situation. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's exactly it. Yes.
Right.
yeah, so we did put that request in. In the meantime, does that mean if Jen today needed that, does she need to set that person up as an admin in the meantime?
Right. Yep. She would need full
Yep.
access to view everything.
Yep. And that's what I did for my admin, so she could go in and make changes to various cases. That's exactly what I did. She's got full access right now, which that's
Perfect.
okay for now. Fine.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Unfortunately, we've had to do that for every single one of our staff members and all our interns.
Yeah, it's on the very top of our to-do list with programming, so I will keep everyone posted as we get that done and pushed out to you all.
Hey, Dan, it's Julie in Plattsburgh. I have a quick question regarding that. So I have 5 counties that I'm working with. I'm in Clinton County. Will if I set up all of my staff access here for everybody that's listed, will it automatically show up that way on Diana's or Steph's or Judy's, or do they have to each individually set theirs up?
You are able to set their level as the admin.
Right, I set their level, I realize that, and then when they go in, they only get what they show. But if I also set up my filters and what we want to do on cases here, will it be the same on theirs? Or do they have to do that?
No, they have to do it. That's per login.
Okay, that's what I thought. But if I set Diana, Steph, and Judy as just staff, they can only access their own, correct?
Their own cases.
Right.
Yep.
So they wouldn't be able to see the other case. That's what I wanted to make sure before I put everybody in.
And
right,
so
until this.
Yeah, you'll want to verify that with your access levels because you do have the ability to change it, but make sure, peek at your access levels first, that the staff setting is just how you want it, and then go in and set them to staff. Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah, and the key thing for everyone is, we just threw some default staff settings there. I mean, you can name them anything you want, all access, county only access, whatever you want to name them. We put them by function, but they could be called whatever, and you can change what you click in that menu. So you can customize that. I know we covered that, but we covered a lot of stuff, so I just want to remind people about that. Okay, great. These are great questions. What else question. We can move towards glitches or things like that, or questions like we covered it, but maybe you want a quick refresher on it.
Does anyone have any idea on the settings so that we can see multiple cases at one time? In the browsers, we've tried multiple browsers and keep coming up blank.
Yeah, you can only have one case window open at a time.
You can't have multiple cases open at one time.
Right. So is that what you're
Okay.
saying you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's really problematic. So maybe I'll tell people to open it in two different, like Explorer and Firefox, so that they can have multiple windows.
Yeah, can they log in into two different browsers, and is that a workaround to have two cases up at a time?
If you absolutely need to, I know that there's a security issue, mainly. Wait, I think it would work to have two browsers open at one time. Yeah, I think that would be okay.
Okay.
I seem to recall, and maybe I had it wrong, Claire, that I was able to have two of the same browser up and two different cases up. Does that seem?
You're not supposed to be able to. So, for
Okay.
instance, if I had case number 3 open and I went to click on case number 4, then it would open in the same window that case number 3 was in. So it takes over case number 3, meaning that you cannot, so you shouldn't ever be able to have more than one case open at a time.
Okay.
But who knows? Every browser is slightly different, so maybe things have changed.
Okay, but in theory, what's the downside that people ought to consider, in your opinion, if they decide to say open up, if they decide to open up Firefox and Chrome each separately, log into each, and that way they can have two different cases up at a time? Anything that they should be concerned about or worried about with that?
Right. If you have two browsers, I think you're probably okay. I would like to double check with Carol. The reason why you don't have two cases open within the same browser is just a security thing. So that, because mainly the system only opens up one case at a time. So it's like it's opening up case number 3 and it's ready to make changes to case number 3. But then if you open up case number 4, it's going to instead make changes to case number 4. Then if you go back to case number 3's window and make a change, now we're in this gray area of where does it make that change? Does it make it in case 3 or case 4? And so to prevent any of that confusion with browsers and databases, that's why the limit was set, that you could only have one case window open at a time. Again, if you're doing it in separate browsers, I feel like you're probably okay, but it is something, it's a fairly important data issue, so I'd like to check that with Carol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on. We're about 2:30. Let me do maybe a last call for any burning issue or anything you want to quickly raise before we kind of move through to the next parts of the agenda.
Hey, Dan. This is Chris in Westchester.
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I have maybe a little silly question, but when you add mediators or even staff onto a case after opening it, how are they alerted, and are they alerted by email every time you put them on it as a case developer or a mediator?
You have to actually alert them to it. And
You do? Okay.
right. So what most people do is as soon as they open a case, they are also scheduling a mediation session, or it might be scheduling an intake or something like that, but they're actually adding a calendar activity. And then part of that calendar activity is down at the bottom, they send an email note out to the staff involved, so that would be the mediator that you've assigned to it, alerting them, so that alerts them that they have been added to the case, and also any details about it, such as here's the intake or here's the upcoming mediation session.
Okay, but that has to be done through like a calendar item or something like that?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, that answers my question. Thanks.
I will, I mean, so long as we're talking about it, this might be confusing the issue, but there is another option, and that's just for admins. So what you can do is go into your global settings, and whenever, let me read this exactly, whenever a new case is added, you can send an email to admins within the system.
Oh.
So
Okay.
yeah, so if you guys are going with that route of having your staff added as an admin, then I don't know, then they could be alerted that way. But just to be honest, the cleanest way is as you add a new case, you add a calendar item, and that and you just have that alert your mediator.
Okay. All right, that'll work.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Was there someone else who was chiming in around the same time Chris was?
Yeah, this is Lindsay, also from New York Peace Institute. I was scrambling to unmute myself.
Hey, Lindsay.
But to answer the question of how to open multiple cases, taking the security threat off the table, if you log into the caseload manager 2 times, so if you open the home screen twice and log in twice, it's letting me open 2 cases at once. Did I explain that effectively?
Yeah, that's what I had done as well, Claire. I had Chrome up. I got into Chrome twice, two different browsers open, same browser open twice, and not just multiple windows in the same one. And then that's exactly how I had done it too, Lindsay.
So whenever I do that, so I might have it open in 2 different places. I might be logged into 2 different people's accounts, for instance. But then when I go to make a change in the first one, it won't let me make that change until I sign in again. And as soon as I sign into that first one, it has signed me out of the second one. So I don't know, maybe that's just the version of the browser I'm using and there's been an update, but that's how it's supposed to work. So we should double check with Carol about that.
Okay. Thanks for raising that, Lindsay, and thanks for checking on that, Claire. So then there's a question coming in about reports, and we haven't quite gotten to reports because we don't have the full suite. There's someone saying, is there a way to have county directors have access to reports without making them admins? What are the rights on the reports? Is there a way to set that, or does everyone have access to them, Claire?
I'm a little hesitant to answer that because I know that you have a lot of specific reports, and I'm not exactly sure how Carol's setting the access. But I believe for the most part, people do have access. What's the right way to say this? They do have access so long as they're allowed to see that piece of data. For instance, you can set your access level so that you're not allowed to export anything or to see any participant information or any staff information. And so long as the report doesn't include any of that, then you're often able to run that report. So the long answer is people can probably access all of the reports without needing to make them admins.
Okay, so let's track that. And that question came from Melissa and Michelle from CDS. So let's track that and make sure that's the case. Right now, I haven't heard of anyone suppressing certain data from certain groups, but folks may be doing that, and that would potentially affect that. So, Melissa and Michelle are saying currently staff do not have access to see the reports if they're not admins.
Okay.
So, let me just ask, it may be very early, people may not have interacted with that part. Is anyone else kind of experiencing that? Or has that come up for anyone else?
And again, I'm not sure how Carol has set the access levels for these. So that might be how it is now, that only admins are allowed to access reports.
Okay, so I'll put that on my to-do to talk with Carol about access level for reports.
Right.
Maybe that's another access option we want is for people to click on, can they access reports or not, for user access. Okay, thanks for raising that. All right. Anything else before we move on to the next piece? Actually, I'm seeing one piece, Drillin, you're asking about adding case summaries. Can you either type more or unmute and tell us a little bit more about your question on that? All right, we'll just wait to see if Drillin's able to do that. So, all right, let's move on then in the interest of time. Mediators are asking for it. So Drillin, is this the case summary form that you give to mediators? It includes party information, maybe what the case type is and that sort of thing. Are we talking about the same report that you would usually pull out of DRCMS? Aha, okay. So basically mediators are asking for the case summary report. So during the Superuser training, we said right now, really, we're going to ask people to self-provision that case summary report by creating a template in Caseload Manager. The fields, almost all the fields that you need are there for that. And if you have trouble finding a field, let me know. I can help you find that field so that you can merge it. So basically, to create your own case summary report, with just the information you want folks to see, and then you can always run it, print it to a PDF, and have it ready for mediators. So Drillin, if you need help with that, I'm happy to do that. You can just call me offline. Let me just check in with the group. Has anyone else created a case summary using templates right now?
No.
We still need the fields.
Yeah, so I'll be following up with everyone after this. We'll have of the names of the custom fields, as well as the names of some of the fields that aren't appearing there right now.
And
so they don't.
If
Go ahead, Claire.
people want a case summary just for a specific case, so you're not exporting a large amount of data, but you just need information for one case. When you open up the case record, it's kind of hidden because it's the color is very similar, I think, to the actual case, to the case record color. But if you look in the far upper right, there's a link there that says export case. And so from there, you can quickly just grab the fields you want and export that. So that's an easy way to get a case summary if you want one.
And that exports it into
tried
the
that, and it had problems with exporting out the participants. It did the main body of it, but not the participants. And it's just really hard because it's so, you have to save it and then open in Excel, and it's really long, and so you have to reformat it to be able to print. So it's a workaround, but it's had a lot of problems for us.
Okay, and you can also pull it up in Microsoft Word. So if you've created a template using mail merge, you can also merge it into there. And then you're right, it's a little bit prettier of a format. So just a couple of different options.
So one option is to use the export. So if you opened up a case in the upper right-hand corner on the green bar, there's this export piece, and that sends it out in the text file format that then needs to get brought into Word or Excel or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the other option that we're talking about is using the templates to create a case summary. And then the question there has been, how do we make sure that we get all the right information and have the right field names so that the merge happens properly? And so I think people need some more options in terms of the fields that they can merge into it. I think I have some of that information from Carol, and that I'll share out.
Great.
Okay, great. So, I'm just taking a note here. Okay, great. So let's keep moving then. And then there's a question about mail merge templates. We are going to cover HTML mail merge templates during a webinar down the road. So I'm seeing that question come through, and we'll talk about what's coming up. All right, so let's move on. I think we've kind of covered number 3 as well, some things that people have learned along the way about what's working in terms of prepping staff and this sort of thing. So I appreciate people sharing that. We'll keep that on the list, so I hope as more and more people kind of roll out further and further, if there are things that are working for you with your staff that you think would be useful to share out with folks, please take note of it, so at the next time we get together we can share that. So I want to check in on the email last Friday I sent out. It had a bunch of kind of follow-ups from the Superuser training as well as some next steps. And I particularly wanted to highlight 3 things that were in there. I want to make sure that it didn't get buried. I also want to make sure that everyone got the email because we've been sending it out as a large group email, and I hope that hasn't gotten stuck in somebody's mail filter. So if you don't have an email from me from last Friday that had a lot of details about implementation, check your filter or give me an email and we'll try and figure out why you're not getting that. So are there any questions on the DRCMS final transfer? I'm starting to get those emails coming through. Does anyone have any questions about taking care of their final DRCMS transfer? Okay, great. So if questions come up, let me know. Again, we're trying to hit, a goal of a week from Friday. So keep me posted if you're running into problems or, someone's gotten sick and you haven't been able to get to it. We do have some wiggle room there, but I really want to see if we can hit that goal. So just keep me apprised. Any questions about how we're going to handle registration for neutrals in the future? This is that thing where you're going to send me that spreadsheet with names and I'll turn that around to you with registration IDs so you can get them in the system quickly. Any questions on that?
That is only potential future new people, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thanks.
So we are working to get the imports done for mediators that are already in your system for next week. And all that stuff is being prepped and prepared right now. So our hope is that's going to hit the system next week. But yes, after that point, if you need new names of mediators in the system, since the registration ID is required, you have to get that from me before you can enter them in. So let's use the spreadsheet as that method. So any other questions on that? And just so folks know, this is to make sure that everybody has their own unique ID number because many people do mediate across center territories. And so the reason for that process is to make sure that everyone has a unique number. And we'll be able to do that a little quicker than we've been able to do that in the past. Okay, the last thing that was kind of new and kind of a little bit buried in the email, maybe purposely, maybe not, is this piece around, sorry, I'm seeing a question before I get to that. Nancy's asking, will all mediators from DRCMS be coming into this new system, even mediators that are inactive? And the answer is yes. Right now we've got active and inactive mediators coming into your system. They'll be marked as active and inactive. You'll need to double check that and update it because that's active and inactive as of maybe kind of like last December or maybe November. So it's possible people's active status has changed since then. So you'll have to double check all that. But Nancy, yes, both will be in there. If you don't want your inactive mediators, I suppose it's possible to cut those out, but since they're so highly filterable, it's probably better to have them in there and have that full history of who you've had on your panel. So if you have a strong preference to leaving those people out, let me know. All right, any other questions on mediators? All right, so then hiding fields. There are some fields, and I listed the names of them in the email, that can be hidden, and that might unclutter some of the case entry sections of the case view for Caseload Manager. If you would like to do that, contact me. This is going to be kind of like very highly regulated and documented, because there are going to be times we might need to unhide things, and I have to be very careful about tracking that. So if you'd like to do that, send me an email. We'll set up a time. I'll show you how to do it, and I'll ask you to document it for me in an email so that I have a record of it. So it's not a big deal. It doesn't take long at all, but I do want to take steps to make sure I'm on top of how that's happening. Any questions on hiding fields? Going once, going twice. All right. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. I'll just power through next steps to give you a sense of what's coming. So we've got the neutrals import. That's what we're aiming for next week to get that taken care of. We've got Thursday check-ins pretty much through the month of July, 2 o'clock Thursdays. We're going to try and record these if you have to miss it, but it's better to be here because just like we had some good back and forth on this call, it's helpful to have as many people that can make it. Maybe come the last one, we'll check in and see how we want to do August, whether we want to do it once a month at that point or just use the listserv or what's going to serve the group. We'll check in eventually on that. And then I did want to get people's input about upcoming webinars. Claire and I have kind of created a list of what we think needs kind of the topics that need kind of more immediate attention and those that might be kind of longer term. So we have things like the billing and things like the HTML templates, all the stuff that you asked for at the training. We've got that on a list. But I also want to be mindful of not inundating people with too much too soon. And I'm wondering what the right timeline for the training is. Are there opinions, and these would be recorded kind of 1 hour or 30-minute kind of demo Q&A type of webinars. Do people have a preference of when we start doing those?
No.
No?
For us, kind of the sooner the better.
On certain topics or all topics, Corin?
Hard to point to one topic that is like less important, but definitely all of the reporting, the HTML and all of that. I think we can probably guess it, but if there's, some stuff isn't obvious, so I'd rather jump, do it right from the start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Smart.
I mean, since they'll be recorded, I guess people can always just get on them when they want. I just don't want to flood people with too many things. So if we did like one a week for the next 4 weeks, in addition to this call, is that too much for folks? Again, or we could do 2 a week. I mean, are people saying, "Hey, give it to me in the next 2 weeks. Let's just do them all, bang them out, and that way I can get them when I need to," or do people want to spread them out? I'm going to count on you to direct us on this.
Clinton County doesn't object to stretching them out a little bit, seeing as I'm kind of a one-woman show with the other counties. I'm probably going to take a little more time to get everybody up to speed. So stretching them out doesn't faze me in the slightest.
Okay, so it sounds like Dan just got disconnected, but This is Claire. So thank you everybody for the feedback. And so Dan and I will just look at the schedule and we might push those a little bit closer together, but as Will was saying, then we'll definitely record them. So even if you're not ready to incorporate the feature at that moment, then you can check out the New York support page and listen to the webinar when you're ready to go live with that feature. So for those of you that are ready to, and you're jumping at the bit, then great. We'll try to get those webinars scheduled quickly. And for those of you that aren't ready, no pressure. You can come back and watch them as soon as you'd like.
All right. Thanks. I just got back in. I'm sorry, somehow I just got disconnected. What was the consensus, Claire?
It sounds like most people would appreciate sooner rather than later, and those that are not ready for sooner, then it sounds like they're okay with watching the webinars at their convenience. Do I have that
great.
mostly right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I was just checking with everybody. Did I get that correct? Great.
All right. So then then Claire and I will put our heads together and revise the schedule that we had in mind, and we will notify you as soon as possible on the schedule for these and get those out to you as soon as we can so that you have them. Thanks for that input. All right. So I think that brings us to the end of where we're at with the agenda. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise before we sign off here?
No?
All right.
No, thank you.
All right. So appreciate all the work that you're doing to make this happen smoothly and keeping the lines of communication open, everyone. So let's just keep talking and appreciate everyone's efforts here. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Dan. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.